Sure.
For a moment before I do the roll call, because I have to.
Sound intelligent.
Thanks for being here.
You're a dear.
I feel like a
Still pulling off.
It's like,
It's fine with me. Oh, never mind. It's okay.
Well,
I've got
it's
a
all-
coat on if
okay,
it
good.
gets cold.
so you throw a party and nobody comes. All right. I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee of Thursday, February 22nd, 2018. If we could have a roll call, please.
Counselor Dowdle,
Here.
Counselor Armstrong,
Here.
Counselor Kretzer,
Here.
Fire Chief Lawless,
Here.
Lieutenant Keroy,
Here.
Lieutenant Ritter.
Here.
Okay. At this time, I'd invite any public comments to come forward and speak at the mic. Not seeing any. We'll move on to number 2. Reports from department representatives and discussions with counselors. Item number 1, Fire Department active shooting protocol and ambulance fees. Chief Wallace, if you
So,
could.
we talked about active shooter.
Yes.
So it could be our fire aspect, EMS aspect. It's a mass casualty incident. There's protocols involved. Doesn't matter what incident it is. Once we get more than 4 people that are injured, we kick their protocol. It's on a regional level. So everybody in the county trains on it too. So as we bring people in, everybody's coordinated with
Okay, so when it comes to like responding to a particular scene,
Right.
say in such an instance, the police are there first.
it. Right.
Or if not, you wait for the police?
Right, we stage.
And at what point do you go in with your EMT crew?
Once the police clear it and deem it safe for our personnel. So
And-
it's a coordinated effort that we work together. Anytime we could have it, it could be a call to somebody's home where they may be
Right.
suicidal.
Right,
It's the
right,
same
yeah.
protocol comes into play.
Okay. All right. And so is there a fire department role in that as well, away from the EMTs?
Yes. As far as fire department, everybody's cross-trained. I have 32 EMTs that are fitting my personnel. So in 28 of them are critical care, which is basically paramedic. So if we get a mass casualty incident, we have professionally trained responders able to handle it, and that everybody's speaking the same language works out there for us.
Do you go in with police protection? Police coverage? Do you go in with an
On
officer?
something like this, if they, it would be their call
Okay.
as to if it was safe to bring our personnel in. And we obviously don't have any ballistic protection or anything along that line.
Okay. And if we could discuss ambulance fees. I watched the video. I know it was discussed previously. I'm still a little confused on how the actual, the revenue is directed to the police or to the fire department and to us. Is it?
How it's directed,
How
how
it-
we take the money in.
Yeah. Let's
So
call it.
in September and August, the woman that was doing billing retired. We were able to bring her back 50% as a fire phone, get me through everything. She's my only administrative person I have. She had been doing it for years. We went to a third-party billing company. There's a lot of, when you deal with Medicare, Medicaid, there's a lot of code changes. And they're ramping up even more this year. I believe that there's 22,000 code changes. It's outrunning one person, so we had to go somewhere else with it. This company was the same one that does CBPH. And so I reached out to CBPH, Morrisonville, and we had several things that we had to change. One of them, all of our PCRs, which is your pre-hospital care report, we pick up in the ambulance, all the information we take is now done in electronic form. That, we were able to set that up, how this ties into billing, we were able to hit all of the things that we need to, so that you couldn't go to the next page unless it was filled out properly. So there is no New York State kicking it back, Medicare turning it down, Medicaid saying it wasn't done properly. We've set it all up with that company. That gets electronically filed to the third-party billing. They have 17 people that work on this. And they go through and they take care of it. What we found is we're getting a better return on it, and we raise the fees and stuff.
Right. So as a recipient of your EMT services, how was that recipient billed? Are they billed to their insurance?
Their insurance. Medicaid, and then it would go to, if we weren't getting a response, the third-party billing would be contacting them.
Okay, so that, all that's taken away from
Right.
your department?
Right.
Okay. All right. Good. And any feedback on that? New way of doing things from the
Not
recent
really,
years?
not too many. We've had a couple people call, we still have some people stop by and want to make payments.
Mm-hmm.
We'll accommodate them for right now. We've been transitioning fairly well.
I think it was there once when he tried to stop and make a cash
Right.
payment.
Try to
Okay.
make cash payment, right.
Right.
So
Which,
we have a receipt book, we have
Mhm.
lockbox,
mhm.
but that's very minimal.
Right, right. Okay. Okay.
Who put you onto this idea, Scott?
What got me onto this idea?
You.
Reaching out, doing collective, seeing what other areas are doing, other municipalities, doing some research. Seeing if we were where we were supposed to be and how do we get it better.
Okay. Good
Just
idea.
Progressing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If we could do that several times a year, we would be
Right.
solvent. in
Trying to
no
think
time.
of what other areas that same process might pay off,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
But that was fantastic, what you did. Certainly contributed to the general fund health this year.
I'm hoping, our estimates, we went low. We would still have to see, I'll be able, this company will be able to give me breakdown spreadsheets per month. So we'll be able to chart how we're doing. There's a lag with Medicare, Medicaid when we switch, so we're getting some extra money in right now. I don't want to use that as a basis for what numbers we're going to get on a consistent month to month, because I don't think it would be valid. So another month or two, I'll be able to report back.
Okay.
We'll chart it out, but
Okay,
we may be able to do significantly better than before.
excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Police Department and Active Shooting Protocol, narcotics, and the Burgess contract. If we could first address a shooting protocol. We have both lieutenants present.
So I'm actually going to read from our active shooter policy. It's been in place since 2007. It's taken some changes along the way, but just so you know where we stand. Is the goal of the Plattsburgh Police Department to protect life. Officers responding to an active shooter incident shall accomplish this goal by immediately using any legal means at their disposal to make contact with the active shooter and stop them. This may include arrest, containment, or use of deadly force. The philosophy driving this policy recognizes that active shooter will endeavor to kill as many victims as time will allow, thus must be stopped as quickly as possible. It shall be the duty and responsibility of the initial responding officer or officers to quickly locate and stop the active shooter. The responding officer prioritizations of activities in order of their importance are stop the active shooter, rescue the victims, provide medical assistance, and preserve the crime scene. So there isn't much to policy stopping the active shooter. You touched on a couple other things in how do we coordinate with the fire department, because obviously one of the points here is to provide medical assistance.
Right, I wrote, yes.
So what we would very early on do is set up an incident command structure, and we would coordinate with the fire department. It would be the chief we would have on scene at the command post to coordinate with his staff. We would have a safe staging area set up so we could treat people on scene, get them to further medical care. There is a protocol that's not preferable, but in the event that the scene is still hot, meaning it can't be truly deemed safe, we would still have to coordinate some sort of efforts to try and accomplish our goal, which is to provide medical assistance and rescue victims, if feasible, and it can be done safely, because like the chief pointed out, they do not have ballistic protection. So we have to be cognizant of that too. The other thing that I would highlight on our policy in bold is arrange for a safe staging area for uninjured evacuees and cause their orderly escort to that location and subsequent collection of personal information and reuniting with the band. So also in this is people that are not involved, and that to keep them unnecessarily from their families is something that we want to avoid.
Okay. Now, and as, thank you for pointing that out, it can be a one-on-one situation, like a domestic situation, or it can be a large.
There's a wide range
right.
of what could qualify as an active
Do you work with, say, the hospital, the school district, employees? Do you work specifically with individuals on their planned procedure? So you know what they're telling their people, and you know what they're being told?
And over in the hospital.
To a degree,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
We run through the hospital with Mike Cahoon, who is their emergency response. I actually sit in on the meetings, and we go through what their protocol is.
So
How we handle everything.
when you arrive, you know what their plan is, and they know what your plan is?
Right.
And like you said, it's a mass casualty
Mass
protocol that
casualty.
encompasses a lot of other things too.
And in reference to providing medical assistance, is that in reference to them, or would the police department themselves provide medical
So
assistance?
officers can, one of the new iterations of active shooter policy is officers on scene applying tourniquets to hemorrhages of the extremities to victims on scene to buy them more time to get to more higher level medical care.
Is that being done? I'm sorry, is that proposed, the tourniquet issue?
So that's the new iterations of training policies that, you know, how do we accomplish these objectives more effectively? And one of the things that's been identified in the last several years has been applying tourniquets as quickly as possible, if safe.
Okay. And I think, you know, it's a horrible learning lesson, but as these occur, there's things to be learned. In responding, do you wait for a certain number of individuals from your department to arrive before action is taken?
So that's an excellent question. Very early on in post-Columbine, there was a notion that you needed to wait for a certain amount of officers to form a contact team. I can tell you that our policy reflects the more reasonable approach that a single officer is adequate for response, that the number one priority is stop the active shooter. If that means you're going in alone, it means you're going in alone.
Okay. And the date on that's 2007?
When our policy was written and adopted.
Right. Was there something in place before the actual writing of the policy?
I would be guessing.
Okay. So even 2007 is a little, is that ahead of its time?
Well, I can speak to our department tries to be very progressive when it comes to training and philosophy and trying to do what is best for the community.
And if that situation arrives on campus, are you second in command behind the university police? How would that
So
sound?
I know that's kind of a weird concept of, you know, the hierarchy of police in this area. Jurisdiction is a separate thing when it comes to prosecuting offenses.
Mhm.
I can tell you that there is no ego when it comes to stopping an active shooter, that the state police officer was first on scene, that the university police officer was first on scene. Whoever is first on scene, everyone is going to provide their efforts and will deal with everything after the fact.
Is there coordination between campus and the city as well?
We do have protocols in place.
Okay. Anything else?
There was one thing I want to touch on that we were working on with interdepartmental is if somebody was injured and it was still a hot scene. We're talking about, they have an SRT team at the police department, talking about bringing some of maybe one or two EMTs, high-level EMTs, paramedics, critical care, getting them to be a tactical EMS, so that if there was a situation like that, they would be trained in their movements, so that they wouldn't be hindering them or being in the way. It would be have holistic protection. So that's something we're working on.
Okay. Good.
Always striving for something bigger and better.
Thank you for that. The other counselors have any other questions? If we could also briefly update on the narcotics situation. I mean, there's a lot of areas to go into, but if you could just, I'm not asking for 25 words or less because I don't think that could even begin to do it. We want to talk arrest, usage, overdoses. You just want just a little brief history on where we're at.
Where we're at. Our narcotics enforcement unit continues to make arrests. I think in the last 2 weeks, we had 3 significant narcotics arrests. The unfortunate trend is that they get bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't know what the true reason for that is. Are narcotics officers getting better at their job? Are there just more narcotics in the area? I can't point to one specific.
So the actual incidence of quantity is bigger, is that?
It seems more frequent, varies in amount.
And
The
more
frequencies-
guns are starting to come into the community too, aren't they? That's the scary part.
With these arrests, you're finding the weapons as well with that, is it?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And
Wasn't there a loaded gun seen on Montcalm last summer? One of your detectives pulled a guy out of a car who was sitting on a loaded gun in a drug bust.
That's correct.
now the DEA has, is the right word, reduced their involvement locally. At one time they were, what, enforcing. Now they're just looking for the bigger hits of
So, I mean,
personnel changes.
I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the DEA. I know that something changed as far as their priorities and objectives.
Mhm.
I can't speak to that.
How about their enhancement of what you're doing, or your enhancement of what they're doing? Is that changed?
So I would say that that is more the case, is that with the onset of our local narcotics enforcement unit, that they have been able to work very collaboratively, whereas before it was, it's a different model.
Mhm.
A task force versus an impact unit of a smaller amount of officers versus a combined effort from many different agencies forming a task force. It works differently. But I can say that they work very, very well. And the DA task force is very instrumental in achieving our objectives.
Good. Okay. Thank you. If there's nothing further, we'll just move on to the Burgess contract, which will be on tonight's agenda regarding the continuation with nuisance animal control officer in the amount of $25,000. And I get that's coming up, correct? The expiration of that contract, and that's why it's here?
The contract actually expired January 1st.
It did, okay.
I've been in contact with Mr. Burgess. He has fielded several phone calls from residents throughout the city from January 1st until now. I spoke with him last week, and he indicated that in years past he's been able to start prior to the contract actually being approved in good faith, and he's done so. He did so effective Monday. There are, in his estimation, numerous locations throughout the city where there's been skunk activity, where he feels that an early onset of his activities will be able to yield significant results.
Okay. And were there any other interest from any other control? Is it?
As far as, I mean, there's possum.
Well, I'm thinking
Any other contractors?
competitors amongst the guys with cages?
No, not that one.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. And I think at one time we asked if we could get a report as we go along as
As
to
far as
numbers,
numbers. I have some
what's happening.
rough numbers from 2017 if you're interested.
Sure, we got 11 minutes.
So skunk complaints total for 2017 were 104. Raccoons, 138, I'm sorry, 38.
38 or 138?
38.
38.
I apologize. There were 11 opossum complaints. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
26 woodchucks, and there were 3 bat complaints of bats in houses. Of those, there were 60 skunks that were actually removed by Mr. Burgess, 19 raccoons, 8 opossum, 9 woodchucks, and 3 bats.
I'm sorry, how many skunks in
60 skunks were removed. And that's over the course of 2017.
I trust this wasn't all one complaint.
It was not.
Horror story. All right. Well, thank you for that.
And
the
you
other
all
dis-
do some of the dog work yourself, the officers, don't you?
We do all of them. I mean, I'm actually listed as the animal control officer for the city of Plattsburgh, and we use the patrol officers to do the actual animal control, and we contract with the SPCA for housing.
Makes me think of one question. When you respond to a dog complaint, whether it's barking, whatever, do you check to see if the dog's licensed?
Yes, I mean, that's part of what we call.
Okay. And is there action taken if the dog is not licensed?
Yes. There's a city code that deals with unlicensed dogs.
Okay. And what is the action? Is there a...
It would be to issue an appearance ticket for a violation.
Okay.
Of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else? There being none, we'll move on to item 3. Request from Police Chief Ken Parkinson to continue the contract with James Burgess as the nuisance animal control officer for 2018 for the same total cost as of in 2017 of $25,000. Can I have a motion?
I'll motion.
All right. Mr. Kelly, seconds?
Would be you, you're the only person on the
There
committee.
you are. That's it. Well, give a roll call?
Could we have some discussion?
Sure we can.
Counselor Dowdle, this contract has been in force for a number of years, hasn't it? Do you know how many years we,
I don't. I'd be guessing.
would you say 10?
With the exception of that time, we reduced it in half, right? And then had to reinstate it.
The beautiful thing about it is it's working. And if I remember correctly, before Mr. Burgess came on board, we had a full-time animal control officer in the city police department, right? So this action has reduced that responsibility in the police department and assigned it to this one person, and we're getting this service at a very good rate. So I think that's great.
Any other discussion? Can I ask for a roll call, please?
Yes.
Okay, yes, all right. Carried. Any old business that anyone wishes to discuss?
So it depends on
What's old business?
what's old business. Well, I mean, it's old in that we've gone through the cycle of a snowstorm and the process of issuing notices of violation and fine. And the police department has been in charge of monitoring the city. So I just wondered if you could provide some feedback about how that went on your end.
I can certainly do that. The first instance, it was a dry run prior to the law actually taking effect. And I'm sorry I don't have exact figures, but I believe it was 38 properties that were found in violation of the law. That information was shared with the building inspector's office and with Public Works. And shortly thereafter, the law was passed and we had another storm. And the numbers were pretty similar. I think it was 32.
Okay.
Again, the numbers aren't exact. And once again, we were able to forward that information to both of those departments.
Right.
And,
You satisfied with the mechanisms that allow you to transfer that information,
Yeah,
whatever
it was
technology is involved? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it was relatively straightforward.
Okay.
We have a shared folder that I personally oversee. And once the
Okay.
data is collected, I'll actually share it with the other two departments.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything else, it's dependent upon other activities.
That's right.
And the first time we were able to do it in just a couple of hours. The second time we're busier.
Right.
And it took the better part of the day to get the information
Right.
collected and then shared. But,
Yeah.
it was
Do you, then once that original, monitoring process takes place after the storm has ended and people are responsible 24 hours later, I'm not sure, how systematic your monitoring is, but is there a way to, if you didn't get to something that first drive-through that you go, do you keep track of other places that you might not have been able to cover as effectively, and so that the process of monitoring is ongoing?
Absolutely. It's assigned typically to a shift that's working, but if they haven't been able to, identify all the properties in that particular area, it's going to be passed on to an oncoming shift.
Okay.
And specifically, probably to one of the officers on the shift.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can I just ask, maybe it will reflect in future statistics, of the initial 38 and the second round of 32, are those the 32 coming from the 38? Are these repeat
Not
offenders?
necessarily.
Okay.
There were some that I did notice, but not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might be, well, and then in terms of notice of violation and fine, repeat offenders do get an additional fine, right, so be interesting to see if it's possible to kind of get a sense of how many are repeaters.
Well, we
That would be
maintain
good.
the records from every storm. At least I've been maintaining those records, and it really won't be too difficult to track.
Be good, thanks.
Any other items of old business? Moving on to number 5, any items of new business? There being none, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second. Okay. All right. Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for that.
Just a few minutes, we'll begin a
Always ask
public
good
hearing.
questions, Dale. Hey,
That's the answers, I know.
I wonder though, when you're seated, whether people can hear you. So that
There's Peggy
maybe
Fleming.
next time you get asked, whoever's speaking.
Here's Peggy Fleming.
I
Christy
don't know.
Yamaguchi, all wrapped in one.
I don't know if that mic picks them up, but.
Yeah, we had him here, then we moved him back.
well, I know at some point there was a question as to whether or not mics could be provided, but
Yeah.
Mayor, are you putting
Point well
the
taken.
projector? Because if you put a projector on, the video doesn't work, or the audio, he's got a problem with that. Yeah, so we can't, they won't be able to hear this. The only way to use it is.
I think it's
put an
kinda
extra
drafty now.
projector,
What about
not-
you?
Do not use a
Oh,
projector
listen to
camera.
you, use it.
Yeah, that will ruin the audio. Yeah, there's something going on with the audio.
Florida.
This camera. No, you can
We got
use
some
this.
sun.
I did, I got a little
Use it that way.
back thing taken care of. You said while we're there, we'll hang out. But now I like my Aunt Lawrence, who used to get a phone from home. I'm so well. I'm so cool.
I'm going to North Carolina next week.
Oh,
I'll be Skyping in, however.
you might be cold or you might be hot, so
Yeah, I'm going down to see my grandkids and my daughter, so.
that doesn't matter.
My son-in-law wanted to go to the beach with his buddies. And so he really it was such an imaginative approach to the situation. He bought me a ticket, and that was able to, placate the wife.
Oh,
Good. She's off this week. She's taking the next 2 weeks off. Yeah, it's,
I hadn't seen this before, no.
yeah, right, on her picture.
When is this for?
We went there Wednesday night, somebody texted her.
Right.
So we went to Arnie's for dinner. She said, I'm gonna drive up and take a picture. She went up and had a picture of the points.
And that's really nice.
Yeah.
20,000. That's
So
really
we're
great.
going to do that again. And then I got a call yesterday that a tree fell.
Well, we might put this up for initial consideration tonight, and if it gets moved, we could probably,
Down the shower.
so that's the timeline, yes, sir.
For many years,
Academy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, dear.
And a few years back, he did do knock down the service wires. And knocked took a pole from the service wire.
Organize all the training, all the
So I got all the mandatory driving through, and he really directed everything. He was yesterday, supervisor school, instructor schools. He was an electrician, so for that, he was pushing that extra. Joe is giving me
That's good.
He'll do instructor school, he'll organize it. And so I talked to him, and he was supposed to go up today.
So he wants to pick up where he left off and do this organization and do some more training.
Give me a holler.
And he's willing to do it for $5,000.
Yeah.
I like you in blue.
That money comes from assets.
I just sent Heather a text message because that's one of the questions I forgot to ask. She hasn't responded to me yet. So if I find that out.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Usually has one or two decimals.
It was just a question, I wondered.
I think he feels he gets 3 votes. I feel he gets 3 votes. He probably say 5.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I just don't want to do anything to embarrass him.
Okay.
Hopefully go through this. If not,
Put that on
Plan
tonight.
B, and I don't know what the plan
I don't know either.
I was gonna tell you to.
It's a total cost of $62.
is. I will tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
Everybody ready? I'd like to begin a public hearing for this day, February 22nd, 2018. The city of Plattsburgh is holding a public hearing to hear public comment on local law P2. I believe a copy is there in the back of the room for you. A local law amending Chapter 86, Sections 2 and 3 of the City Code of the City of Plattsburgh with regard to number of planning board members and appointments, term, quorum. So this is an opportunity for any individuals in the public to please come and present themselves to us. Seeing none, I'll end the public hearing and begin our work session for tonight. This is an opportunity for us to have extended conversation on any items on the agenda tonight. Sometimes we can also hear various member reports if you wish as well. I was going to talk for my stuff and there's comments at 5:30. Unless we want to do it twice, that'd be fine too.
I'll follow up in departmental report.
Yeah, all the write-offs were covered last week in our municipal lighting board
MLD,
meeting.
right.
It seems like kind of a long agenda.
Yeah, but it's not, no. But I mean, it's just an
And there's
opportunity.
no way we can't bundle them, can we? As far as just or do they have to be done
We
individually?
can waive a bunch of readings to expedite.
And move them all.
Yeah, you're in charge of that, because I can never spit it out.
So Lisa Travel requested this set up as a bundle.
Right.
Right.
You want to do committee reports?
I know that at least one committee wants to do it after
We can wait
mayor's
then.
comments,
Yeah, sure.
but if anybody'd like to do theirs early, and then do a brief one later on, is fine too.
We can wait, that's all right.
Yeah, we gotta do our audit. I don't know where mine is. Thank you. Oh, they're all done. There you go. Okay. I don't get any of these anymore. Big.
Thank you.
Yeah, or I could put it up for initial consideration. Okay.
Is there any feeling that you need an executive session for any items tonight?
I think if I could speak on, this was just directed to me, it could lead to initial consideration, that there's been a request for the mayor to sign a 2018 contract with our basic academy director and training director for the state police department. This total cost would be $16,000, which I think is about a $5,000 increase. But this leads to the coordination. If I could ask Lieutenant Keyboy maybe to discuss this a little further, what the proposal is. I know it says, so the total cost is $16,000. 5 of that is?
So the total cost is $20,000 if you look at the second page.
Okay.
The 2018 expenditure would be at the $16,000.
Yes, okay.
So currently, Mr. Santor is being paid $15,000 for his direction of the Zone 9 Police Academy, which is largely reimbursed by the revenue that's generated from the academy. For the additional $5,000, I'd like to believe that he would be directing the training for the police department. He would be maintaining training records, and he would be organizing any schools that would be put on by the police department, including instructor development schools, supervisor schools, things of that nature.
Okay. And the training that you made reference that would entail the $5,000, how's that been done previously? Is that?
And it's been a case-by-case basis. So if there is a supervisor school that needs to be directed and put on by our department, we would contract with Mr. Santor to do that.
And we have done that in the past?
We have.
For a total of, does it vary depending on the request?
It does. It depends on the school. You know, like a supervisor school is 3 weeks long, so it would typically be, I'm sorry, but it would be a couple of $1,000.
So the $5,000 would
Cover all of it.
any and all?
Yes.
Regardless of what the request or the demands are?
That's correct.
So it's a bargain then?
If we were to,
In
It's my
your view?
I'm sorry.
In your view, it's a bargain?
In my view, I mean,
Uh-huh.
years back, Mr. Santor was employed part-time in a similar contract, and I'm led to believe that it was $20,000 in addition to the 15 for the academy that was paid at that time. And I'm sorry for not having the raw data in front of me, but that's what I was.
And this contract would take effect, I'm sorry, I just got this,
It would take effect, immediately. The first payment wouldn't be due until July.
July 1st. Okay, 'cause see the payments are 6 payments?
I believe so, but the payments move into 2019, or yes, 2019.
Yes, they do, the last 3 do. Okay.
where are the academies held? Do they change locations or they vary locations?
No, they're held here at the.
They are held here?
Plattsburgh Police Department.
Okay. Is there an opportunity where officers from other municipalities?
Yeah, that's
might
actually
be
the
able-
spirit of the Zone Academy. So we, not only is the Plattsburgh Police Department, but we also partner with area sheriff's departments, police departments, St. Regis Tribal Police. This last academy, we had folks from the Ticonderoga Police Department, Inlet, New York.
I guess my question also would be, if we were to host an academy and other municipalities sent officers, do they pay Mr. Santor directly, or would we be reimbursed something for hosting?
They pay to us.
So there's an opportunity where we could actually create or generate some revenue from hosting academies?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that could offset the $20,000 cost?
It's more than offsets, doesn't it?
It does. We typically profit by the police academies, and we do supply, all the clothing, we supply the books, we supply the instructors, but it is typically profitable.
So would it be said, say, if we send 4 of our own, that they're paid for by other tuitions?
Yes.
Okay, so we,
And that's one of the benefits of hosting the
Hosting,
academy.
okay.
all right.
Also being discussed is perhaps moving the academy up a little bit this year.
Yes, it's my understanding that, although we don't have a hard date, the academy would like to start it in the spring, possibly May or June. And that, again, that's dependent upon obviously our hiring needs and that of the local departments.
Right. Because we
My
would need,
concern I express is to make sure there's enough recruitees from across the North Country
Right.
to still allow you to have that full academy. You could do a little bit earlier, and they're exploring that right now.
so in terms of placing this on tonight's agenda for initial consideration, do we want to do that, or should we, do we wait till next?
I don't know, how does everybody feel?
I feel comfortable.
I'm comfortable with
I think it's been well explained. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Would you all like to have a 15-minute recess then?
Sure, man, well, there's another time.
Let's recess begin again at 5:30 with the regular meeting. Thank you.
What I should have said.
Skiing.
8 days later, I woke up and Kate was
We were actually at Startup Lake. We had a winter carnival when that guy was saying, and it was so weird. So on the way home, we were saying, oh, I wonder where I'll show up, you know, Las Vegas.
In the spring. I know.
Very weird.
Yeah, it is. This is gonna be a movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're directing?
No.
It's going to be an interesting story when it finally comes out. What was he doing for all?
I don't know.
Does he have a girlfriend in
You
Sacramento?
know, that's,
I told my wife, he's either dead or he's in the Bahamas.
Yep, that's what I said.
Sacramento
Under
threw me for a loop.
assumed identity, right?
Yeah. On a phone along the way.
Where's Waldo? That is the most bizarre story about it. Right? For 4 days, he has no idea.
6 days.
Is it 6 days? Yeah, where he was, how he got there.
And
And he bought a cell phone.
I know.
He still had his ski garb on.
And he still had, yeah.
Yeah.
But my question is this, I mean, we all know the physical layout of White. How did he get from
Yeah,
from the lodge essentially, up the road, onto 86, and he picked up by a tractor trailer?
it's making sense.
I'm glad I wasn't there when he took that snowsuit off. And I still went off to get a haircut and put it back. I did, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things.
Got a hair?
Michelle,
Well, okay.
I saw James today. I was driving across campus and he was walking into Red K, so I beeped to him. Is that James or is that Jesus Christ?
Did you ever see
It's been a while since he got a haircut.
The Big Lebowski?
Who's that?
The Big Lebowski?
Oh, yeah, the movie.
That's who you saw.
It's like Lebowski.
This is ridiculous Chester.
The only thing that was missing was the sweater, right? Sorry.
This, are you talking on the podium and point out things, or are you gonna do it?
You think I should sit down?
The one thing is, I would like to go talk about it. I would like to show him what happened through this significant cut in 2019, as we talked about.
So you want to go and you do your thing, go up to the keyboard and start putting in the numbers?
But I noticed that's in protecting, so you can you, I don't know how to do it, I would do it myself.
Yeah. Good point.
He feels good. Sun's out now that it's going down.
Isn't that pretty?
Very uplifting, but you know, the spring's on the way.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say this, Rochelle, but I'm trying to be a tough guy, but I hate
It's really not winning me over as the years go by.
yeah.
Although, you know what I've tried to do? I kind of tried to be oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah, no, I know, but I didn't.
thankfully.
Yeah, I can go on handle it. That's where I know. I know that, and that's why I'm asking, because I know what.
Even in the winter. Yeah.
Shoot 'em.
My dog Simon.
When I was in California here last month was an eye opener. I could see what's
Oh gosh, I was dreaming about California last night. I couldn't sleep,
yeah.
and I was visualizing my first real apartment after I graduated from college. It was one of those Spanish style apartment buildings. And there were only, I think there were only two. I was just the only other year because I was downstairs across the street. It was so it was only like $400 a month.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty
My
nice.
son lives in Echo Park.
What's that?
That's charming.
And you said you'd been there. Why did you go there?
You go around
No
when you're
people.
it's the place to be. Basically in West Hollywood, I could see there.
Yeah.
It's just different neighborhoods that are interesting, you know?
Downtown LA, then that's not such a good area for Sunset. Then Echo Park, and this is all along Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
Echo Park, Silver Lake,
Silver Lake, yeah.
and then Los Feliz, I think is the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then Hollywood, then West Hollywood. And beyond that, I guess, is Century City and San Antonio.
That's not Century City. Century City is, you know,
Beverly Hills is in
full
there.
of high
somewhere.
rises, yeah. The Santa Monica was like,
Mike?
But judges like it just the whole way. But you're at night.
Okay, not to, okay.
Do you have Alexis Nexus revenue?
It's gonna be a big year.
Yeah.
It is. Just like last year.
Priced out, that's your like return.
Probably.
But the
I don't think
bar
I
association has a program to do one assigned counselor a year.
Nor do I want to be.
We know there's a response for that. You're gonna
It's not the biggest subscription.
How's that?
Planned out.
That's pretty good. I should work for Hallmark and write greeting cards. Yes. Dr. Carbone's, she wanted the baby that
How many hours?
I guess the medical board said, you really want to, well, that's what you know, dialysis. But, yep, so,
They'll, if they ever have a need for 3D catheter, you're their man.
Okay, all right.
I feel so connected.
Good to the last drop. Okay, all right.
I'm into you.
I've had a catheter, and the other side
And right back at you.
One or two every other month or so is usually the case.
Fortunately,
I was here in spirit. It was floating around the room. It's good, nice to be missed.
I don't know. This was several years ago.
And so, I haven't had any.
Yes.
And the balloon will and then they deflate them.
takes the air out.
Is that a professional
Oh, yeah,
opinion?
it was all
Is that a
explained to
professional
me.
opinion?
Price increases so much.
Whatever you do, don't pull it out.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Wow.
Missed you at noon. Missed you at noon. Yeah. Me and others. Who? No. No, no, right, right. Oh.
But now that time is sure
I'm on.
that part's tricky. But
If you go, it's more than 100 miles.
everyone's out of town, so I guess. So I got a call to take down these two immigration job
Because I worked there. And the doctor was very, very nice. Yeah. I think that's
The elements are non-citizens in the United States. There's no record of them crossing. Stuff like that can really mental element, you know what I mean? But there was the nicest people. But so this guy was 24 years old.
said the same. Slow as bread.
I don't know any of the politics. Palestine area.
Maybe Saul was in that. I don't know.
Basically run the police department and he's going to be arrested for nothing, for whatever. So Canada, $50,000 across the same line. Got busted in 2 seconds. But and so after him, I had an interpreter with me, and there was a guy down the road here. So they were able to have a good report right off the bat. And then the next guy,
Nice kid.
Yeah.
I may not have taught you something, but I did teach you well.
Make sure the seal hasn't been broken. Make sure the seal has been broken.
Yeah, I better check the seal, make sure.
So apparently the interpreter
But I never crossed things with the book and
Hi, Emma.
which very surprised me. I don't know. I'm baffled by that.
said that. I said, there.
We're trying to go the other direction.
It's hard to make, there's nothing I can do. The best I can do is expedite the process, lead out tomorrow, get time served. And then I'm trying to explain it, go to immigration judge, because I don't have the criminal case, which is, did you prosecute? But the real case is the civil immigration case. There's a federal center in Batavia. Go appear for an immigration judge, claim asylum. Judge is going to say, so,
You know,
I have any physical.
I don't
So I don't, telling them, I'll say it's difficult sometimes, but they don't get it.
You want me to pass these out?
Yeah, you can, there's two different versions.
I kind of find it difficult to read up there. Well, whatever. I just wonder. You decide.
Just do the one version here. This one's the one from Mike made some changes on, so I'd rather.
Just call her Christy Yamaguchi.
If you want.
Okay,
But
that's
this one
fine.
can go out.
All right.
So we're shading on
Just that maybe at the time would be better. I don't
no
know.
bless.
Tell me what.
Although she did better than I would
Give one to
have.
Mike and pass it.
I have the word for week standards.
Yeah, a couple times I worked behind the house.
I gave it up when I couldn't get a size 13 double runner. I tell people that all the time. Yeah, I aged out of that sport. Really, kid? Yes, I have a double runner.
They've almost invariably got immigration status here, but they're afraid to leave. Haitians or El Salvador.
I took my grandson
Hard to break
once.
this one guy.
It was over his game. He must have fallen off. He loved it. I want to go back. I really do.
You really do. You're not. You don't
Certainly
hurt.
there.
Well, I was. You got, this was great. I said,
Well,
no,
my
that's not part of it.
son-in-law goes up
I had a couple
gallivanting
people
around some
take him around, but he thought that was great.
His wife has a sports
Did it have the walker?
No, I
support
didn't.
system.
Oh,
Apparently, I'm not a instructor.
very nice.
These guys. Just the same. We just buy nothing you can do.
They're smart. He's got hard work.
Well, thank you.
I couldn't find my original display. Because all my computers, I tried to be computer right there.
What's that?
Anyway,
Are you getting that?
I made that one.
Oh, that's short. That's much. That's the Reader's Digest version.
Dale's resolution for initial consideration.
You were asking me about the restricted incident. When the students came out to the street. Well, there was a couple. Like the lady in the car was But the other lady, someone used to be in the faculty, she's old. She got shot. Well, what did you do?
You know, they had a hard
But
he
said, you're like an
it was always a weird part of our
the
culture.
more I gave it, the let me they go through. Because every time they yes, and she's like, kind of like this. Oh, okay. Well, you know, that's for you to explain to her. That's, yeah. I don't know if that was innocence or her lucky day. Yeah.
You got 100 words.
There we go. I'd like to call the meeting of our common council to order and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Dowdle?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor Kretzer?
Here.
like to begin with just a few comments. First of all, we had a little bit of a crisis today on our Saranac River, major ice dam. We're monitoring it all day. Thank you for the police force going out to Underwood and other locations, and the fire department, DPW were also on. Major ice dam right here came up probably 6 or 8 feet above flood level down here, covering the railings going down. You'll see big chunks of ice still on the lake there. It had threatened the pipe that goes across from this side to the sewage treatment plant. But all of a sudden, I passed this executive order somewhere around 10 o'clock for the ice to go away, and it actually just started flowing. Just maybe 5 minutes, it was gone. It must have been really satisfying for you guys to see it released there, but disaster averted. I guess this was only maybe this handful of times it's got that high to threaten that pipe. Is that correct, John?
In 25 years that I've been here, I don't think it's ever been that high. I think one time some of the ice flowing by tapped the pipe. I've had a number of calls where it was getting close, but never like that. The whole jam was stuck against the pipe.
Wow.
Down there talking to DEC, and we heard this boom. We're like, oh my gosh, the pipe just went. It was ice jam breaking up.
Yeah.
So,
Gone viral on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think you're saying that you crossed the bridge over Osable Chasm and the ice was actually hitting the bridge.
Yeah, they had to close, so the bridge was actually
on the chasm. Wow. On the chasm.
So damage averted.
Just north, no.
Right. Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. Sorry, that's happened before. I was going to say, if it hits the chasm, we're all in trouble. Okay. All right.
Some of you have been following the recent deliberations with the students on campus, and obviously we have a great deal of sympathy. We know that we have a very caring community in Plattsburgh. There was another incident of a leaflet being distributed within the city of Plattsburgh that was troubling and racist, and as you know, we really consider ourselves a very welcoming and diverse community, and we really our hearts go out to the students that are having to deal with this. It's not up to us to decide what they're going through. It's up to us to hear what they're going through and try to understand it. And it's very difficult for us in our circumstance to put ourselves in their shoes, but we stand side by side, and this community has. Many of you would remember the time when we stood against the Westboro Baptist Church when they came to town. And we don't tolerate bigotry or racism or discrimination in this town. We're going to work together to make sure that's very well understood. And I'd just like to speak for just a little bit. I know that it's not for another 3 or 4 months that you all produce your 5-year budget plan, but we recognize in these very challenging times that the more we can do earlier on within a year gives us much more flexibility. People have asked me if this is a crisis, and I say no, the difference between a crisis and this is that we've actually got ways to proceed and plans that we can put in place. A crisis is when you have very few options or no options and you're searching for options, but there's a number of options that your committee, the budget committee, is considering. And what I want to do, we've extended it to really be a 10-year plan, of which obviously the first 5 years are what you can be most concerned about, but to look even a little bit farther to make sure any solution we can come up with over 5 years is also sustainable over 10 years is our goal. And what I did with this is a pretty familiar spreadsheet for you. We've been working with versions of this for a year now.
Chief, Chief Lawless, could you maybe dim a light or two? Thank you.
Now, all of you remember early on in 2017, Councilor Ensel and I very well remember that because we're brand new to this council, and all of a sudden we see this budget, and to your credit, you did do some adjustments within those first couple of weeks of 2017 to really help out. But if we had taken that budget and just not done anything and did the prescribed a 0% tax increase, then face some of the things that we probably ought to have known were coming, like the firefighters arbitration, etc., and some things that we didn't know were coming, like elevator repairs, overruns on healthcare costs, etc. We didn't quite know how the Humana, United Healthcare, Excelis would pan out over the years. If we incorporate into that, we were looking at expenses in early 2017 of around $25 million, matched with revenues of around 22 or and a bit. What we ended up doing by the end of 2017 is paring that down to about $23 million of expenses and revenues being a little bit higher than expected. But through this year, we've actually been able to, through permanent and temporary reductions, shave expenses by around $2 million, which is really quite incredible on the general fund. So what I've done is in a series of graphs, I just want to very quickly run through, and I know Councillor Kelly will probably speak a little bit more detail from his perspective in a moment. But here on the left-hand side is the general fund expenditures. The green line, this goes right back to 2010. The green line is what would have occurred had we not really changed our spending patterns in 2017, 2018, and what I propose beyond right through 2028. You see quite a wide gap in total annual spending. We anticipate it could be growing by 2028 up to about $30 million with a reasonable inflation factor of 2.5%. There's been some discussion of just how quickly our payroll and our various costs are going to increase. But we think this is a pretty good compromise given the inflation we expect. Having gone unabated, though, this number would have rose to closer to $36 million. The effect on those expenditures with relatively fixed and predictable revenues would be this green line that would have ended up in relatively large deficits in just 10 years' time. This green line, the surplus doesn't depend or deficit don't depend only on expenditures, but they also depend on revenues. And what we would have found is that we would have been forced by having very large deficits after 2017 to start cranking up tax rates in 2018 and over actually the next 5 years. I chose that 11.3% tax rate increase because that's about how much taxes have gone up over these last 2 years in both the levy and the mill rate, early in January of 2017, early in January of 2018 as well. If we were to, instead of really doing the very hard work that you've all been doing and will be continuing to do, if instead we just said, well, we're going to solve this problem by raising taxes, we would have had a series of 11.3% tax increases, and I've plotted that right over here. Here's the tax increases from 2010, and you see it stops after 5 increases of 11.3% increases at the constitutional tax cap. At that point, we're not allowed to raise taxes anymore legally. So we're stuck with fixed revenues, but continuing increasing expenditures to the point where our fund balance, this green line, starts going by 2028 to the neighborhood of $15 or $20 million fund balance deficit or debt. We obviously aren't sustainable as a city at that point. So for you to not have started responding in 2017 and 2018 and beyond, yes, we would have had a crisis. We're not having a crisis because we are watching these things, and we actually do have a plan that's making all the world of difference, to the point where these fund balances with very modest tax increases right here, 2.5%, these fund balances actually are stabilized, not as high as nearly I would like, but not going down to the negative that they would otherwise be. And we can see it produces a series of sometimes deficits, sometimes surpluses, depending on when we're having one of those years with large arbitrations or whatever. But it seems to, under these scenarios, stabilized, and that's why I can say that this isn't a crisis. This is just a big challenge that we're going to have to deal with, and to our credit, you have been dealing with it right since the very get-go when you became aware of this in 2017. So I kind of use the analogy, Lieutenant Kilroy probably understand this as a pilot. You know, you're flying along, I think I've used this analogy in other contexts before, you're flying along and you find that there's 3 engines out in a 4-engine aircraft, and you want to make your way back to airport, stabilize the flight, and 3 engines out in a 4-engine aircraft is actually doable. You've got a plan, there's a procedure to follow, and we're going to get through this. We're not going to get on the PA, though, and say, listen, passengers, 3 engines are out. Let's just admit we're really screwed. Instead, we're going to get on with the work of flying the airplane, and get it back safely. So that's what we're trying to do. We understand the challenges. This isn't a crisis because there is a plan. The plan isn't going to be easy, but it is something that we can, I think, all accomplish together. So I think we're going to be talking about this as a council for probably at least the next few years, but I think it's doable, and I'll leave to Councillor Kelly to discuss from his perspective as the Chief Budget Officer a little bit more detail in just a few moments in the meeting. So that said, let's please continue on with the meeting.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on February 15, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the City Clerk's office.
Moved by Councillor Armstrong, second by Councillor Kretzer. Discussion?
I just, one correction on number 10. Also, Councillor Kretzer voted in the negative. Number 10. On the minutes, it just had Councillors Ensel voted in the negative. Councillor Kretzer. Yes. Councillor Kretzer did as well.
Any other items? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the City of Plattsburgh for the week ending February 21st, 2018 in the amount of $102,236.61 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Ensel, second by Councillor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the opportunity for us to have various committee reports. I'll begin with Councillor Kretzer on governance strategy and city operations.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong and I continue to review the structure of taxi fare rates within the city. We're going to begin to work collaboratively with the owners of the taxi companies just to assess concerns and then work toward a possible new rate structure that's deemed in everyone's best interest. Also working to review the structure of management of the Plattsburgh Farmers and Crafters Market. We're reviewing the effectiveness of municipal strategies, just working on the effectiveness of managing the market, working with stakeholders in the current market with ideas from other municipalities to see if there's a more efficient, effective, and inclusive way that we could manage that market. We're also reviewing the effectiveness of different municipal strategic planning software that may possibly offer us some assistance in strategic planning, possibly more effectively moving forward. So we're looking into different opportunities in that realm as well. Councillor Armstrong, is there anything I forgot?
City infrastructure, Councillor Ensel.
Yes, we have a meeting scheduled for next week at 4:30. I must say, though, I will not be present at that time. I will be heavily sedated.
It's March 8th.
It's March 8th? I thought it was next week we were meeting. 2 weeks, okay. I will try to Skype in at that point. If not, I would ask if Councilor might be able to take my place. And, Councilor Kretzer said that he'd be willing to take my place in the event I'm unable to. There are a couple of items I know that will be discussed that will be coming up. I think, Adam, you had one that you need, two actually, that you need to have decided on.
Thank you. I have some budget. Councillor Kelly.
Oh, may I borrow your laser pointer, please? Thank you. The red button.
The other way around. And then,
I just wanted to clarify something the mayor said during his discussion. In case anyone here doesn't know, at this point in time, we will have exceeded the constitutional limit on taxation in New York State. And that is why we are no longer allowed to increase taxes. Now, the mayor mentioned that, and most of you probably got it, but I just wanted to again clarify that that is why that line is flat going forward. So I hope that helps you understand what we're up against and why we can't really do the scenario he mentioned at the top of this page where we increase taxes by 11.3% per year for 5 years. Come 2023, we're not allowed to increase taxes anymore. And I think his graphs and charts show you, what happens to the general fund balances and surpluses and deficits after that. So I did want to step up to the podium behind us here and show you one thing that I'm interested in doing. I hope the council might be interested in doing the same thing. You can see that if we follow the current plan in our 5-year budget and do nothing else for the next several years, that we have a fund balance for the entire time. Now, the reason that's colored yellow is because in most of those years we don't meet what we now consider to be a healthy fund balance. We have a fund balance. If it were a healthy fund balance, it would be green, and it would be somewhere.
Maybe a little bit. Can you enlarge it?
Enlarge it just a little bit, sure.
The graph.
Sure. Yeah.
Bottom right.
Bottom right.
There's no
Gosh,
plus
you're always so
always.
helpful with these things. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Okay. Whoops.
Just scoop the
How
other.
do I fix that?
You're good. You're back.
Thank you. Maybe y'all come up here and hold my hand.
You got it.
So, what I'd like to propose to the council is that we do something for 2019 that's somewhat similar to what we did in 2018, 2017. We made some drastic cuts, and as the mayor suggested, we were actually able to cut expenditures by about $2 million. And I'd like to show you what can happen to our general fund balance if we make another round of similar cuts or increases in revenue. Doesn't necessarily have to be cuts, but I'm going to go to that $500,000 figure we projected as those are permanent reductions, not in the current year budget. If we do another round of large expense cuts, what happens to our fund balance then, as you can see, is we do go into the green, and we have each succeeding year a very, very healthy fund balance. And I would encourage the council to consider a move like this for the budget year 2019. Why would I do that? Because we can very quickly, to use a popular expression, we can rip off the Band-Aid and get ourselves back on a firm fiscal footing in a very short order. And another beautiful thing I like about this idea is that watch what happens if we lower our tax rates. We've projected almost a 2.5% tax increase for the next several years. But watch what happens if we go down to 2%. We still have our healthy fund balance, and it continues to grow several years into the future. So if then in the succeeding years we go even lower, let's say, we might go to 1.5%. We'll just do it here across the board. And this would be much more palatable to the taxpayers if we could accomplish this. You'll notice that we're down to a 1.5% tax increase, which is very attractive to our taxpayers, and yet we still manage to grow a healthy fund balance far into the future. See if I can go over a little to the right here. So you can see that with that modest tax increase each year, all the way out to 2028, we still have a fairly healthy fund balance. We'd like to see it in the 20 to 25% range, but still very positive there.
And we're still showing, Mike, cuts of 200,000 each year as well.
Yes, we are, Peter. And that may, that may be ambitious. We'll just have to see what we can do going forward. But
could you see what would happen if you just say in 2021 or 2022 stop the austerity and stop the permanent cuts of 200,000, just put that to zero and see how healthy it would be?
Say at 2022 go to zero?
No, down to the cuts of 200,000. Try zeroing
Oh,
that out so we're not having to cut forever.
Right.
Okay.
Still, it's
Still have a
sustainable.
positive fund balance. We're still above the council's goal of 10% that we set a few years back. We could try the same thing in 2023. What happens to our fund balance? We're still positive going out to 2028, and I'll try it again. Now we're down to almost a zero fund balance in the year 2028 if we stop those reductions for that many years.
Okay.
And I would like to just...
Can we do this? Can we do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that going into these kinds of conversations, we need to keep in mind what our goals and priorities are. I mean, that ties back into, what are we about as a city? What are the programs that we are firmly in favor of preserving? You can't just go at it from the point of view that, well, we gotta slash this, we gotta go in as, I guess it's a familiar analogy by now, with a scalpel rather than a machete. But that's where I hope that Josh and my work, and the mayor as well, in terms of moving forward with a better, clearer sense of what our priorities are, that will help guide the discussion as well.
So today we have a plan, and we've executed the plan. In our first year, we were able to cut $2 million in expenses, and I would propose to you that we do that again in the 2019 budget year. Nobody would ever say that what we did was easy. It was very, very difficult for all of us. And we all lost a lot of sleep about it. There's a lot of turmoil in our various departments. I hope that if we go through that exercise again, it can be done in such a way that it's smooth and it's acceptable to the largest number of people. I think one thing that needs to be said is that our city, if doing nothing is the answer financially going forward, and we follow that plan of 11.3% tax increases for 5 years, we can pretty much close the door on the city. I think we will be insolvent to the tune of, I think the mayor said, $30 million. We can't get out of that. We might as well close the doors at that point. If we want to keep our city alive, and if we want to survive, if we want to make a sustainable future for us, we have to do these things. We don't really have a choice. And the secret to success with something like this is try not to get emotional about it. It's difficult, but if we do it in a measured, planned way, as we have done thus far, we will succeed. And I would like to close this discussion with saying to you, my fellow councilors, that you have succeeded. You succeeded quite well against some pretty tough odds to turn us around from a very high negative fund balance in 2017 to a slightly positive fund balance. And that was just amazing. And I'm sure that you can do many more amazing things as we move into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I hear from Councilor Dowdle on public safety, please?
Well, as we heard within the past hour or so, we had our most recent meeting. At that time, we discussed an active shooting protocol within the city between the collaboration of the police and fire department, ambulance fees, and we discussed the narcotic situation and renewed the purchase contract for nuisance animal control.
Thank you. Public Library, Councilor Armstrong.
We have a board meeting next week, and I'll report out at the following meeting.
And MLD, Councilor Ensel.
We met last week, and as you'll see on today's agenda, we have a couple of months' worth of write-offs that we will be deciding on today. Also, it was announced or disclosed that we did have to buy some electricity, additional electricity. That's it.
Thank you. So we resolved the reports are listed and hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Do I have a first? Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the bills audited by the Common Council for the week ending February 23rd, 2018 in the amount of $2,478,472.70 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This is an opportunity for anybody in the public to please come address the council. This time, we just ask you to restrict your comments to items on the agenda tonight. There will be another public comment period at the end of the meeting.
If I may speak for a moment.
Please. Which agenda item is it referring to?
Regarding the budget, I'm not a numbers person.
That's not actually on the agenda. It's just a discussion item. Would you be able to comment at the end of the meeting on that?
Fine, that's fine.
If you could. Sorry about that. Thank you. Any other comments on agenda items we'll be approving tonight? Okay, I'd like to then move into adoption of local law P2 of 2018.
Resolved, the local law amending Chapter 86, Sections 2 and 3 of the City Code of the City of Plattsburgh. This local law shall take effect immediately upon approval by the mayor and filing with the New York Secretary of State, the entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the Common Council, is hereby enacted without the reading thereof, and a copy of said local law is made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved that according
If
to the
possible,
request-
I'd like to make a motion. Would it be possible to waive the reading of Resolution B through G and accept them all as one, if the council is willing?
Yep.
So I'd like to make that motion to waive the reading and move resolutions B through G.
Second by Councilor Ensel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the actual resolutions. Roll call, please.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council approves MLD to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-3-1, pole top tree face switches, bid opening date April 3rd, 2018 at 11 a.m.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council approves MLB to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-3-2, substation batteries, bid opening date April 10th, 2018 at 11 a.m.
Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council approves continuing the contract with James Burgess as the nuisance animal control officer for 2018 for the same total cost as in 2017 of $25,000.
Moved by Counselor Dowdle, seconded by Counselor Kelly. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Renzel?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves a leave of absence for Aaron Bush from his position as plant attendant in the municipal lighting department effective February 5th, 2018, to take a provisional promotion of storekeeper position in the municipal lighting department. The leave of absence pending until successful completion of the civil service exam for storekeeper.
Moved by Counselor Ansel, second by Counselor Dowdle. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Renzel?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
I'd like to this time hand down the reappointment of Commissioner of Plattsburgh Housing Authority Board to James Barcombe from April 6, 2018 to April 5th, 2023. And roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Renzel?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves MLB travel request for 2018.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and approve, and move all, and approve all travel requests.
Moved by Counselor Kretzer, second by Counselor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Actually, I should have been roll call. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Renzel?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Are there any resolutions for initial consideration?
Yes, I'd like to offer, as we discussed earlier, regarding the 2018 contract for the training director, that in accordance with the request, therefore, the common council would approve that the mayor is authorized to sign a 2018 contract with Ronnie Santor for basic academy director, training director at the Plattsburgh Police Department for a total cost for 2018 will be $16,000.
I'd like to make a motion to implement Rule 4.
Yes.
Second by Counselor Ansel.
Josh just recommended Rule 4.
Do we have a second for your original motion too, then?
Yes.
Okay, Kretzer seconded that too, so, okay. Any discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Renzel?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Gives me great pleasure at this time to recommend for appointment to Patrick McFarland to the vacant Common Council seat of Ward 5 beginning February 16, 2018, expiring February 23rd, 2018, expiring December 31st, 2018. Hope you've all had an opportunity to meet with our potential counselor here, and I can entertain discussion. Oh, actually, we shouldn't be a discussion. Just a roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
No.
Counselor Renzel?
No.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
And I'll break the tie and approve.
No, there's no tie.
Just need
No tie, just three.
So that's approved.
Any other new business or council reports at this time?
Just like to say, welcome, Patrick.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Truly.
Any other reports or comments?
I would just like to let the public know the reason why we were so comfortable with the travel request for MLD and for the write-offs, and also this person taking the provisional promotion and keeping his job open, is that Bill Tracy explained all this to us last week in our MLD board meeting. So we had all the details in advance and we're very comfortable moving this forward. I didn't want the public to think that we're
Rubber
not
stamp.
thinking about these things.
No, and
In the expenses, the travel expenses and attendance are $60 per.
Right.
So
And I
it's
believe
a
that
very
meeting-
minimal cost.
that meeting was also live streamed,
Yes.
in case anybody
Yeah.
wants to go
And
get
it's
into
really-
the archive.
It's really nice that in these committee meetings, these things can be kind of preliminarily approved, so they come from committee with a
Exactly.
recommendation. So it's,
I
it's
enjoy
nice.
that
I should have
process.
mentioned that before I waived the reading.
Yeah,
Maybe that from now
Fine.
on.
I'm glad you did that.
Makes it more effective.
Josh, but I just wanted the public to understand why we're so comfortable
Absolutely.
with all of these items. And also the item for initial consideration that Dale brought up and that we subsequently approved is the same thing. We had quite a discussion with Lieutenant Keroy about that before the meeting tonight, so he gave us lots of details. And one thing that we should have mentioned is that these police academies that we sponsor actually make money. So that's a good investment. That's a good investment. So, thank you.
I think you also referred to, the public's invited almost every Thursday. We do have a committee meeting of some sort at 4:30, where we do have an opportunity for extended discussion on narrow ranges of topics. For instance, as you discussed, we just completed a public safety meeting, and last week we had an MLD meeting after the meeting. So public's always invited to attend those as well, where a lot of this sort of work
and they
is
can
done.
comment
That's right.
during that period as well. And it is also part of the live stream file that's available.
So get your popcorn and watch at home.
Right.
Any other reports or new business? So now, please, the public can come forward and talk about any issue of it.
Don't feel bad. Welcome.
I feel like I'm being shot in the back. Podium. The mention I thought about for the budget was, what if we've got a college housing situation where they're down in attendance because schools are probably going to be going online to who knows what extent. What if somebody else comes forward and asks for a major 10, 20, whatever the number was with Renaissance Village and College Suites, or whatever they call it, Broad Street Commons now? What if someone comes along and says, I want a huge discount? And so far, the two that have been discounted by the city were just because it's easier to do. It's like when you owe the bank $1 million, you have a problem. You owe the bank $100 million, the bank has a problem. I don't know how many other big college landlords there are, but if their attendance is down, the precedent has been set. What if we've got somebody else that comes along and takes a chunk out of that budget? It's a big hit. I'm not sure if there was another way to handle that. I'm going to be asking for a tax grievance discount for a property I've got. I've got 0 occupancy. Off to a bad start. Start at the bottom, you know where to go. But I had a thought for complaints of trash or parking on lawns or snow clearing. Instead of calling into the building inspector's office, and I do it quite often anonymously because I've got neighbors, and I got enough problems with having a neighbor that's a nice guy but doesn't shovel his snow, or the trash. There's one place now on North Catherine. I'll leave it to other people to look it up, but the trash has been piled up for weeks and weeks and weeks. There's mattresses outside, and it's not a slumlord. It's owner-occupied property. Maybe the city could consider having postcards, a very simple postcard, and you could mail it in anonymously. If no one can afford a 47-cent stamp or a 25-cent, whatever a postcard stamp is, the city could have a very simple postcard printed and supply them to people. And that way you could not bother the building inspector's secretary, Denise, by calling in complaints in the middle of her doing something. And you can't find the address. You scribble it down in your vehicle, keep them with you in your pocket. If such a thing the city could take under consideration for a simple, that way you're anonymous, because when I lived on Couch Street, I had neighbors that I would call in. I had one neighbor confront me and say, you know that you've called in 72% of the complaints. And I said, lady, you ain't seen nothing yet. College professor who ran the biggest slum in my neighborhood. It was a disaster. And she confronted me in my driveway because I was calling in complaints. I'm not the problem, she was. I told her, I said, I'm not the problem, you are. Look at the place. Anyway, she's moved on, and she had a beautiful house in Vermont, and I mean a beautiful house. So she could afford to have a guy come pick up the trash twice a week or whatever it was. I wonder if the city police, and I asked this of Joe McMahon last week, if the city police are registering complaints of trash or snow or ice. He mentioned they were, but I wonder what that number is, because if anybody's out there 24/7, it's the city police. Fire department could take notice of these things.
I believe, didn't we get a report? It was around 30 or
32.
something?
Really?
32.
Good. Good. I just travel my route back and forth to work, so there's other parts of the city. I drove by one on Beaumont Street. The snow is 10 feet high on the sidewalk. Some landlord is plowing his driveway, and it ends up on the sidewalk. And it's now 6 feet high. I drove by there today. The other thing I wanted to mention, I've got to grab my electronic device.
And I forgot to put your timer on, so you may be nearing 5 minutes.
Well, did you, are you going to be speaking to the press, Mayor Reed? On the record, speaking, having a conference with them and discussing city issues as they mentioned in the paper?
At some point.
Yeah, so what I had sent to Mayor Reed and a couple of the councilors and the city attorney was the following. A pleasure to listen to you and pleasure to listen in on the meeting last night and to chat with you briefly. I read the Press Republican viewpoint this AM. In my opinion, you need to meet with the Press Republican editorial board without delay. As the old saying goes, it's the cover-up that gets you. And I don't mean to say you're covering something up, but I think you should be meeting with them. From the little bit that I know of meetings and goings-on, you're a public servant, and the press is serving us to report on goings-on. An open-door policy, as you stated last night, means you should meet with the press in person, as has been precedent for decades. I'm counting on it, as I'm sure many city residents are as well. This meeting should be audio and video recorded, made available on the press website, as well as City of Plattsburgh website for distribution to any who wish to watch. I'll do my best to attend future council meetings. A few more issues to mention, Andrew Gold. So I just think it's important that you meet with them. I don't think emails are flat. I send emails once in a while to the press or somebody else, and they say, what are you so upset about it? I'm not. It's just, you can't, you gotta put a smiley face on things. I think you should meet with them, and I like their reporting. I've heard people say that it makes the best cat litter liner, but I read the newspaper every single day, and when they don't get read because I'm away on vacation or at work somewhere else, they pile up and I go through them. I just read about some guy getting arrested 10 years ago for something because I had to throw the paper away. So it's good to have a press, and it's thin. Classified ads are way down, they're not coming back. But it's important that I think that you meet with them and it'd be for us to read and decide where the city is going. But I wanted to read it publicly, not just to have it sort of a semi-private email. I wanted people to know that I think it should be brought forth, and you should meet with them publicly, or to be broadcast publicly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals like to please come and address the council on any items? Seeing none, do I have a
So moved.
second? Second, Councilor Ansel, roll call, please. Councilor Armstrong and Councilor Ansel.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor Spencer?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Good, Michael, how are you?
Okay, bye.